A small but powerful nation nestled in the Mesopotamia in West Asia has been the spark of many battles since the beginning, and has been the apple of a variety of other nations' eyes for centuries. It upholds its desire since the first war recorded down through the Middle Ages and into the 21st century. America recently ended their 20-year longest war in their history with Afghanistan on August 30th, 2021. This study is to evaluate and determine whether the war was justifiable between the dynamics of those two nations, whether just and balance requirements were met in this four-dimensional war. This homeland in the Middle East has been promised to the landowners or husbandmen by Yahweh. It will be wanted and desired into the last war called Armageddon. Why? Because of biblical prophecy. Let's get started. Psalms 19:14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and redeemer. Lord, I pray and thank you, Lord, for the revelation and the ministry of your word, Lord. I pray, oh God, that you would enlighten our minds, oh God, condition our hearts to receive what it is that you are trying to say to the people of the world. In Jesus' name, amen. This scene is a lot this scene is a scene of Lot and his daughters running from Sodom and Gomorrah. It's courtesy of firstartgallery.com. The PowerPoint template is designed by tomritchie.net. However, the contents, the words, the research is mine. Forget what you think you know about 9/11. This is the case study. On August 14, 2021, President Joe Biden addressed the nation to inform the public that he was removing the troops from the war in Afghanistan after 20 years of occupying the nation. He states, we went to Afghanistan in 2001 to root out Al Qaeda, to prevent future attacks, terrorist attacks against the United States planned from Afghanistan. Our objective was clear, the cause was just. He further said that our presence in Afghanistan should be focused on the reason we went in the first place, and that is to ensure Afghanistan would not be used as a base from which to attack our homeland again. And we did that. The purpose of this research is to answer my research question. Was the war between Afghanistan and United States justified? Was there just cause? Why did the war between the United States of America and Afghanistan happen? My research will find if the president was correct, if the war was in fact a just cause, by utilizing the just war theory. What is the just war theory? St. Thomas Aquinas is highly attributed to research in war and faith. He taught the just war theory. The just war theory is a policy for nations to conduct war fairly and to make killing justifiable. Aquinas believed that the war should be justifiable yet constrainable within three set criterion: just ad bellum, just in bellum, and just post bellum. Within the boundaries of just ad bellum, there are six sections that outline terms for engaging in justifiable warfare. First, the war must be fought for a just cause. There must be right intentions to war. Number three, war must be declared by legitimate authority. Four, war must be looked upon as the last possible option after exhausting all other options. Five, that war must stand a reasonable chance of victory for by either side. Anyone that engages in war doesn't have to go in as a loser. They must believe that they can win in order to participate in war or to engage in warfare. Number six, the destruction caused by the war must be in proportion to the good brought about the battle of the war. So that what that means that in most cases that if you have like a very tyrant ruler who is insistent that his whole nation go on a hunger strike, that is a justifiable reason, according to Thomas Aquinas' just war theory, to engage in warfare. However, in most cases outside of those parameters, war is a crime. Now, there are some proponents to the just war theory. Okay, according to the Charter of the United Nations, it reads, nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right or individual or collective self-defense if armed attacks occur against any member of the United States. So the United Nations saying that it's just to go to war if anyone attacks us. It's justifiable, according to United Nations. Other proponents to the just war theory, we have Paul Robinson, who wrote the book entitled Just War in a Comparative Perspective. He notes that justification of war depends upon two criteria, honorable and dishonorable. And that is dependent upon a person's belief, background, and culture. Okay, he believes that in honorable conditions, one culture might think suicide attacks are deplorable and dishonorable, while sacrificing oneself in another culture is honorable, according to their belief system. However, in Christianity, Jesus Christ is the only person that God picked to self-sacrifice. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Therefore, anyone self-sacrificing themselves is unnecessary and is not justifiable, even if no one is harmed. Galatians 1:20 saying, having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, whether there be things in earth or in heaven. St. Augustine wrote in an article concerning the city of God against the pagans, he believed that war is justifiable to keep the peace or when peace is threatened. The late President Jimmy Carter almost agreed and reiterated and said, in Christian warfare, it's not retainable when the peace is established must be clear improvement over what exists. Now, on the other hand, we have W.T. McShane, who shows concern for those who believe that war and violence are just simply unjustifiable. He views for pacifists any recourse to armed conflict endangers the soul and contradicts the imperative of peace. The jus in bellum and jus post bellum are part of the three criteria, also having guidelines for the justification of war. The jus in bellum are rules for engaging in war. And in jus in bello, innocent bystanders should not be harmed. There must be the right amount of force must be conducted. So there is a restriction for deploying military forces. It isn't necessary to mobilize all the armed forces, all the regiments in your army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and or drop a bomb on a nation just because you want to win the war. That is unfair practices in engaging in warfare. The jus post bellum criteria are rules for engaging a war. Okay? It also has rules in what should be done post-war. The post-war requirements are known as the status quo ante bellum, the aftermath rights for the damage that is done due to warfare. When a nation wins a war, there are set rules for reestablishing a country to maintain their independence. They must be able to function independently as they did prior to going into the war. That means countries should not be occupying and controlling the borders. In the jus post bellum, status quo ante bellum, war crimes and punishment are then set in place. The punishment is to prevent any unruly citizen controlling normal citizens. Those tyrants have to do the time if they did the crime. In addition, reparations are put in place. If innocent bystanders were hurt, they are then compensated for their loss. At the same time, establishing reasonable peace treaties. Gary J. Bass was comparing and analyzing the status quo antebellum policies from the past two presidents, former presidents, Jimmy Carter and George W. Bush. Bass noted that both presidents has the same mindset concerning the aftermath rights. They wanted to make sure that the country was manageable on their own and not left unstable under a new regime. In addition, the focus was put on the country's citizens. They did not want for them to be subjected to continual oppressions or restrictions. On that note, John Ross said, once peace is securely reestablished, the enemy society is to be granted an autonomous, well-ordered regime of its own. At any rate, researchers of the day want a more aggressive theory on the criterion for the aftermath, the jus post bellum, due to the previous wars between the United States and Iraq's leaders, Saddam Hussein. Therefore, there's not a lot of evidence to determine the post bellum aftermath criteria. Drone warfare. Life can be only understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. This is a quote from Soren Kierkegaard. Who are they in Palestine? Was the war between Afghanistan and United States justifiable? It's going to get messy because there are three rulers and two were shot dead that were the main key players in this study. The first weaponizer was Osama bin Laden. He was the activist of a terrorist group, Al Qaeda, in Afghanistan. Saddam Hussein, who was the leader of Iraq, and the Ayatollah Khomeini, the former leader of Iran. Baghdad is the capital of Iraq. They are Arabs called Iraqis. Their origins are from the Babylonian Empire. Just across the border are their fighting cousins, the Persians in Iran. Their capital is Tehran. They are Muslims with origins of the Persian kingdom who once was at war and was a superpower just as the Babylonian was. However, both kingdoms once had control over Israel, you will discover. Of course, there is Israel, who are Jews. Israel capital is Jerusalem. The world knows that Israel are the chosen people in the eyes of God with an inherited promise. Today, the Jews are known Israelis. It's a centerpiece. It seems like the world revolves around Israel. In Isaiah 22, verse 1, Jerusalem is known as the Valley of Vision. The burden of the Valley of Vision, what aideth thee now? That thou art wholly gone up into the housetop. One commentary said that the prophets like Isaiah received prophecy about Jerusalem. That's why they are called the Valley of Vision. Today, this area is known as Palestine. Post many wars and years later, Jerusalem was restored to the chosen people by the UN in 1948. So there are Arabs in Kuwait with Muslim faith. Kuwait is highly recognized because of their many oil wells and the wars that surrounds its borders. In fact, this is one of the reasons that caused the United States to get involved with Kuwait. Although there are many other independent countries fighting to hold on their independence, the four most important countries are Israel, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and so that leaves Afghanistan. Afghanis are a mixture of Persian and Arabs. They are a mixture of all three. Okay. Um, Jews, Arabs, Persians, okay, Babylonians. They're just a combination of everyone. Their capital is Kabul. They are famous because of their leaders known as the Taliban. And due to the Russian invasion during the Cold War, they have been highly recognized. At any rate, most superpower countries want to control the borders and want to occupy Jerusalem. That is the reason why they all war. Keep in mind that Israel is the chosen race of people and is the only kingdom on earth that God promised land. They are coveted by many because Jerusalem is the jewels of God's heart. God has graced her who once was a motherless kingdom of Canaan. Revelation 21:11 says, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Who are they in Palestine? Ishmael had 12 sons. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 20, God promised Hagar, an Egyptian slave girl, the mother of Ishmael, Abram's first son, that he will make Ishmael a great nation, a kingdom of 12 princes. God also promised war in Genesis 16:12. He says, and Ishmael, he will be a wild man, and his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand will be against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. The 12 princes of Ishmael are living out their purpose and promise of being a great nation in the promise of their brothers, but Jerusalem belongs to Israel. God made a covenant with Abraham. He has promised Abraham, as long as the earth remains, that he is the father of the chosen people and will be the father of many nations. "911 terrorism," that's our case study. We're going to have to go back and review 9/11. Going back to September 11, 2001, a 20-year war between America and Afghanistan. That date, four jet engine plane took off and was hijacked by Al Qaeda members that attacked America. They were on a suicide bombing mission directed towards the U.S. government that claimed the lives of well over 3,000 people. The world will never forget. They targeted well-known landmarks in America to send a message to the United States government. One plane crashed into the Twin Towers in New York City, known as the World Trade Center. One plane each crashed into the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York, and one crashed into the Pentagon building, and the other missed its target and crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. In a press release on September 12, 2001, President George W. Bush stated, We will be patient, will be focused, and we will be steadfast in our determination. This battle will take time and resolve. But make no mistake about it, we will win. In a rebuttal, Secretary of Defense said in 2007, we are not winning in Afghanistan right now. The plan was to get justice and bring Osama bin Laden to trial in the United States. In October 2001, the United States was deployed to Afghanistan to bomb the airfields of the Taliban and the territories of Al Qaeda. After the war, America has occupied the country to help reestablish the government and restore peace. To help understand why Saddam Hussein, Iraq, and Iran's leader Ayatollah Khomeini were involved, we must go back to address the first Gulf War in Kuwait, a city in Saudi Arabia. Iraq fought an 8-year war with Iran because the leaders took control of the borders in the Middle East. Going back to 2003, an Operation Desert Storm must be explored. In March 2003, America and Allied forces invaded Iraq and overthrew the government. Saddam Hussein was captured and put to death in his country. United States was on a cleanup mission looking for weapons of mass destruction, only to discover that none was recovered. Iraq leader was on a mission to threaten the entire war using the tool of propaganda. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the definition of propaganda is the organized spreading of false ideology or the ideas, information, of rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution. Iraq's leader was advertising to the public via multiple medias like the internet, the television, and radio using scare tactics that he was very capable in threatening to destroy the world through various methods of attacks like chemical, biological, and nuclear warfare, which are the weapons of mass destruction. According to Aldous Huxley, propaganda's purpose is to make one set of people forget that certain other set of people are human. Osama bin Laden, an Al Qaeda member, was a true propagandist. It was tragic and very unfortunate. Over 3,000 people died in the suicide bombing mission on September 11, the Twin Towers, and the Pentagon. In October 2001, there were attempts made demanding for Al Qaeda's leader Osama bin Laden for the attacks on the United States. George Bush ordered the armed forces together with British forces, Allied forces, to Afghanistan to remove the Taliban leader. The mission was known as Operation Enduring Freedom. By the year 2001, the Cold War has just ending. We're going to be in review to understand the past so we can see why the future is the way that it is. What is the Cold War? The Cold War is a struggle between the arms of two leaders, America and Russia. America and Russia have always been at odds with each other. They both strategically attacked each other by instigating war using propagandists. The Cold War the Cold War began during World War II in 1948 and ended in 1991. The Cold War was a slick weapon between the Soviet and America. Cold War collaboration and interaction were carefully acted out as planned by immobilizing others to engage in warfare intending to destroy the other nation. A different perspective of remembering what is the Cold War is similar to giving one the cold shoulder. Giving the cold shoulder is when two friends fight each other. However, they're not talking to each other. So they utilize other people to do their dirty work. They both utilize spies to determine another, they both utilize spies on each other. During the Cold War, American helped those leaders in the countries in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Iran and Iraq. They supported Afghanistan to gain victory over the Russians by supplying military arms and ammunition till the Russians left the country. The Russians had invaded and occupied Afghanistan in 1979 through 1989. The fall of Russia and communism was the end of the Cold War. The focus for the United States was to prevent the spread of communism to the others. That was the motivation concerning the Cold War. Now, I'm going to mention the Cold War over and over again because that is the focus of the war, the fight that was happening throughout that time period. On August 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. In 1991, the United Nations interceded to persuade Iraq's government to cease fire, in which they accepted and left Kuwait free and independent. Remember, Iraq wants to control all the borders in the Middle East. Okay? 1991 in review. So in 1991, Kuwait and Iraq invaded Kuwait, just to keep you on board because I'm going backwards. And that is going to be the template, the theme for this presentation, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and move forward. America and Russia continually to bump heads during the Cold War. The propagandist Osama bin Laden, leader of Al-Qaeda, was found to be behind the attacks of a 9/11 on the United States government. The Taliban is an Islamic Afghan rebel group that controlled 90% of the country in 1998. The Taliban had ties to the Soviet war in Afghanistan prior to the breakdown of the Soviet Union in 1991. Russia controlled Saudi Arabia's border throughout the Cold War. In 1990, Operation Desert Storm and the Operation Desert Shield was a two-part rescue mission from the United States and NATO forces to liberate Kuwait from Saddam Hussein's control. The Iraqi military had invaded their cousins' land to prevent them from having friendly relationships with the Europeans out west. The objective was to prevent Saddam Hussein control in invading the borders of Saudi Arabia. Both countries, Kuwait as well as Saudi Arabia, has many oil wells that the world depends on. The rescue mission included 39 nations that declared war on Iraq. The threat of not having accessibility to oil-rich country has a major impact on the world's economy. What is the coat of arms? The coat of arms is symbolism. Symbolism of a country's military power and strength. The definition of symbolism is an article, concept, or notion that represents another thing. According to the article written in Time Lapse magazine, the symbolism of an eagle is courage and faith. A coat of arms insignia consists of a shield with other articles such as a crown. However, beasts are a notion and an implied representation that is important to the history of a nation. Now, there is symbolism in the Bible in Revelations 7, verse 11.